I do local repairs in Memphis for Martin Music, just a fantastic music store. And Eric Martin's a great guy, been a friend of mine for a depressing number of years. If you're looking for a guitar or anything related to guitar in Memphis, I highly recommend him. They also sell over the internet and have some really, really nice high-end guitars available, and basses and acoustics and all kinds of wonderful things. I digress. Anyway, this Magnatone Super 15 came in. It's a brand new amp a customer bought. And while this would qualify for warranty, I told Eric I would take a look at it and just see if we could skip the whole warranty process of shipping it off. And I'm pretty sure that I found the solution. It needs a new pair of EL84s. This one lost vacuum, as you can tell. So that would be the 120 hertz that he's hearing, because they're not going to have any common mode cancellation. It's probably 60 hertz, but I'm not going to correct the owner. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to change out these tubes. And before I power it on, I'm going to look and see if there's any reason why this gave up the ghost. It could have just been, an unlucky pothole. And we'll take a peek inside this Magnatone Super 15, because I've never seen this model before. And the new Magnatones tend to sound very good. Let's see how they're built. All right, this is inside that Magnatone. And overall, I would grade this amp in terms of absolute quality as a B minus. This particular one as a C, and I'll show you why. But overall, I would say as amps go, this is a B minus build. For its price point, I don't know what this amp costs. If this amp is $1,500 or less, I would give it an A minus for the model in the price point. You have to say how good is good. There are a couple of things I think could be better. Let's see if I can get the focus to play with me here. Got stereo jacks used throughout, and the stereo part of the TRS jacks are not being used, so they have not soldered them, or soldered them well. They gave them a very light coating, and they have in fact broken. I'm assuming that those are not used because it's consistent here, and even if they're not being used, that does give more structural stability to the amp, so that needs to be done. But when you try to get an amp to market, especially with all this wiring, which is going to be done by hand, you want to save money where you can. And they have a very good quality PCB. It's through-hole plated, seems to be fairly heavy duty. I can't really tell unless I pull the whole thing out, but I don't need to do that. It's got Zycon resistors, mostly 1 watt carbon films, the occasional 2 and 3 watt metal oxides. That's all very good. It's got Nichicon capacitors, which are very good radial capacitors. I'm not nuts about the heater fusing, which is very common in amps today. I think it's a European requirement. Usually causes false failures, because at the point that you turn an amp on, there's a brief surge in current, which is much higher than you should expect in an amp with any operating condition. So you get a lot of false fails with heater fuses, but that's not a big deal. All the pots have toothed washers and are on there tight. Pay attention, Dr. Z, that's important. The capacitors are all Mallory 150Ms, which are high quality. So I have, and the silver micas are the high quality ones that don't have the failure issues. There's a couple of maybe Zycon or Panasonics here and there. Overall, these are inexpensive but good components used well. I think they'd probably be better off in terms of saving money switching from the axial Mallory's to the box caps that WEMA makes, which are radial caps, much easier to place on a PCB, and that would cut down their labor. But people like to see yellow caps, so here's some yellow caps. So, nothing's esoteric. Everything earns its place. The good CDM silver mica caps. So that's for the model. As for this specific amp, it has a couple of things I noticed. I dropped my thing, just 1 second. That I'm going to correct. It's got a little, let's see if I can see where it is so I can make the camera focus there. A little stray bit of metal here, which is kind of just stuck to the flux on this pin. I'm heating up the soldering iron, and I will remove that. I don't know what happened. Hit the wrong button. There's a loose snippet of wire there. I'm gonna get that out, and I'm gonna shake the amp out upside down to get any others out. But the biggest issue this amp has, and it's why this particular version of this particular amp in front of me, not the model, but this amp, is being downgraded in its quality, is that, let's see if I can do this. I'm looking through the lens while trying to make my hands work. This red wire is the center tap for the HT connection on the power transformer. This green and yellow wire is the heater, and they're both going to this chassis ground lug. But see if you can see this, the red wire for the center tap was never soldered. It is floating in that hole. And so yeah, it'll occasionally make contact, but occasionally won't. And eventually that would pull out, or you'd have a failure on stage. So I'm going to resolder that and then take this B- or A- amp, depending on whether you take it the price point in consideration, and put it back to where it should be, to a B or an A, and make this thing reliable. So that's the downside with having hand soldered wires and amps. Whose hands, and is the guy doing QC or the woman doing QC really paying attention? That's 90% of my job, just paying close attention to things. So I will fix that and report back. This is that Magnatone with all the bits of stray metal out and everything soldered properly that I mentioned previously. And it's rock solid, and I checked the bias. It's about 56% idle with 120 volts coming out of the wall. That's good. So let's do a little quick playing. And given their #1 endorser, let's see how badly I can mangle this. So it does that thing. This is a fairly low output bridge pickup on a telly, so it's not going to really do the Billy Gibbons thing. You got to have a hot pickup on that for his modern stuff. Not that I can really play like Billy Gibbons, or if I had his guitar, but. It's a very bright amp, even with the treble and presence down. But it's a good sounding amp. Would not be my choice for blues. I mean, sorry, for jazz, but you know, that's what guitars have knobs for. I guess my verdict on this is it's a very good sounding amp. It's fairly well built by modern standards. This one had some issues. Those issues were very easily corrected and spotted. So I think this is probably not the best example of this model. I'm sure most of them are just fine, but I don't see anything in here that would scare me off recommending this to clients. I think it's a good sounding amp. It's built to be fairly easy to service. You can do, there's my meter telling me to turn it off. And crucially, with the exception of these radial caps, everything else on the board can be changed without pulling the board. So if you have a bad resistor, easy to service. And, you know, worst comes to worst, you have to pull this board. It's not that difficult on this amp. This is not a Mesa. So I'm pretty impressed for the price point. I just want to point out real quick that instead of having wood screws to hold the rear panel on going straight into wood cleats, they have some metal inserts there to accept the machine screws, which means that no matter how many times you take the rear panel off to change tubes, these holes won't strip out like they do on most amps which just use wood. So kudos.